Her sisters sold her to the rival pack, unaware she was the Alpha King's fated mate. The forest was quiet that night, but the silence carried a tension as sharp as a drawn blade. Shadows stretched across the silvered leaves, and the wind whispered secrets that only Selene could feel. She walked carefully along the hidden path behind her home, a small lantern in her hand, its flame flickering against the darkness. She was not supposed to be out so late, but something had felt off all evening, a pull in her chest that told her danger was near. Selene's sisters, Maris and Alara, had been acting strangely for days. Their smiles seemed sharper than usual, their laughter hollow. At first, Selene thought it was envy, perhaps jealousy of her quiet beauty or her gentle way with the family's wolves. But tonight, she sensed something far worse. "Selene," Maris called from the shadows, her voice sweet, almost too sweet. Selene froze. "I'm here," she whispered. She stepped closer, her lantern casting long, trembling shadows across the moss-covered ground. Maris and Alara emerged from the darkness, their eyes shining with a strange light. They looked like her sisters, yet somehow colder. "Come with us," Alara said softly, reaching for Selene's arm. "We have something important to show you." Selene hesitated, a chill running through her veins. "It's late. What is it?" "Just trust us," Maris replied, her smile a blade hidden behind silk. Reluctantly, Selene followed them deeper into the forest. The moon hung low, silver and full, painting the trees in ghostly light. The farther they went, the heavier the air became. The whispers of the forest seemed to grow louder, carrying warnings that Selene could not fully understand. Finally, they reached a small clearing. Torches burned in a circle, and shadows of men and wolves flickered against the trees. Selene's heart stopped. The rival pack. She had heard tales of them, of their strength, their cruelty, and their unyielding hunger for power. "Selene," Maris said, her voice no longer sweet, "they have a proposal for you." Selene stepped back instinctively, fear rising like a storm in her chest. "Proposal? What do you mean?" Alara stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. "They want you, Selene. You are very valuable to them. You will live in their pack. You will be protected, yes, but—" She paused, letting the words sink in. "You will serve them." Selene's heart raced. "Serve them? I cannot. I belong here." Mari's smile faded. "You belong to no one but yourself, Selene, except for fate. And sometimes sisters must make hard choices." Selene's breath caught. Something in their tone made her blood run cold. She looked from one sister to the other, hope fading. You're selling me." "Yes," Maris whispered almost regretfully. "I'm sorry. It is necessary." Before Selene could react, the men of the rival pack stepped forward, their eyes like molten amber in the firelight. Wolves growled softly behind them, tense and dangerous. Selene's knees shook, but she did not cry out. Something deep within her stirred, a fear she could not name, mixed with a strange, trembling recognition, as though her soul already knew the danger and the destiny waiting for her. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "don't do this." The rival Alpha stepped forward, a towering figure with dark eyes that seemed to pierce straight into her heart. His presence was commanding, almost unreal. Selene felt her pulse quicken, not entirely from fear but something else, something deeper, something she could not understand. "You are ours now," he said, his voice smooth, powerful. "Come willingly, and perhaps you will find a place of safety." Selene shook her head. "I do not belong to you. You have no right." Maris and Alara exchanged a glance, tight-lipped. Selene's stomach twisted with betrayal. How could her own sisters do this? Her heart ached with a pain she had never known. But before anyone could speak further, a sound like thunder rolled through the trees. The air itself seemed to shift. Shadows stretched unnaturally, and a cold wind whipped through the clearing, extinguishing torches in a sweep of darkness. The rival packmen stiffened, wolves growling and bristling. Then he appeared, the Alpha King of her own realm, Kale. He moved silently from the forest edge, yet every step carried weight. Tall, dark, and impossibly strong, he was draped in shadows that seemed to obey him. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, locked onto Seleni's. In that moment she felt a strange calm, as if all the chaos around her could not touch her. "She belongs to me," Kale said, his voice low, unyielding, echoing in the silent night. The rival Alpha growled, stepping forward. "She is ours, you have no claim here." Kale's presence did not waver. He stepped into the clearing and the shadows seemed to coil around him like serpents. "I will not ask again. She is mine by right of fate." Seleni's heart pounded. Fate. The word resonated in her mind like a bell, and she felt a warmth bloom in her chest, something she had never felt before. It was as if a part of her had been waiting for him all her life, even without knowing. "Yours," she whispered, trembling. Kale's eyes softened just for a moment before returning to their sharp, commanding gaze. "Yes, yours, and I will not allow harm to come to you." Maris and Alara stepped back, uncertainty flickering across their faces. They had sold her without knowing the truth, that Selene was the fated mate of the Alpha King. Now their plan crumbled in an instant. The rival Alpha snarled, signaling his pack. Wolves leapt forward, teeth bared, but the forest seemed to come alive at Kale's presence. Trees shifted subtly, roots rising like walls, shadows twisting into protective forms around him. A low hum of power vibrated through the air, and even Selene could feel it, strong, ancient, and terrifyingly beautiful. Kale extended a hand toward her. "Come," he said. Selene hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, her fear mingling with awe. The moment her hand touched his, a spark of warmth surged through her, as if their souls recognized one another. "Quickly," Kale commanded, his voice steady but urgent. "We must leave before they strike again." The rival pack hesitated, then retreated, wary of Kale's overwhelming presence. Selene's sisters remained frozen, their betrayal now twisted with fear and regret. As Kale led Selene through the forest, the moonlight illuminated her face. She could hardly believe what had just happened. She had been sold, betrayed, and yet saved, all in a single night. The weight of her destiny pressed upon her chest, heavy and inescapable. Why me?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. Kale glanced at her, eyes softened by something she could not yet name. "Because you were always meant to be mine. Because the bond between us is older than any grudge, older than any pact. It cannot be broken." Selene's heart fluttered with a mixture of fear and hope. The forest around them whispered, leaves rustling as if in agreement. There was magic here, ancient, dark, and alive. "Do not speak yet," Kale said gently. "Danger is not gone. The rival pack will not give up so easily. You must be strong, Selene. You must trust me." Selene nodded, though her mind raced with questions. How could she trust anyone after betrayal? How could she accept this fate that had appeared so suddenly, so violently? Yet when she looked into Kale's eyes, a strange certainty filled her. Somehow she knew he would protect her. Somehow she knew their destinies were intertwined. The forest thinned, revealing the distant lights of Kale's castle. It rose from the rocks like a sentinel of the old world, ancient stone towers, banners fluttering in the wind, and a sense of power that made Selene's chest tighten. She had never seen anything like it. As they approached the gates, Selene could hear whispers again, soft voices like the memories of the forest itself. "The curse awakens. Only the bond of fate can survive it." Selene shivered, feeling a mixture of fear and longing. She did not understand everything, but she understood enough. Her life had changed forever. The path ahead would be dangerous, full of trials, enemies, and secrets. And yet somehow she felt that the greatest danger and the greatest reward would not come from outside forces, but from the bond she shared with Kale. The gates of the castle opened before them, dark and imposing. Kale's hand rested lightly on hers, guiding her into the unknown. And then from the shadows of the outer wall, a low growl echoed, a warning from the rival pack that they were not finished. Selene's heart pounded. Her destiny had begun. The castle rose before Selene like a fortress carved from the mountains themselves. Its towers reached high into the night sky, dark stone glowing faintly with enchanted runes. Even from a distance, it radiated power, a presence older than any pack, older than any king. Selene's fingers tightened around Kale's hand. She had never felt fear and wonder so closely intertwined. "You must stay close," Kale said quietly, his voice like gravel mixed with warmth. "The castle is old and it knows who you are. It will test you. Do not be afraid, but be cautious." Selene nodded, her mind still reeling. "Test me? What do you mean?" Kale's gray eyes softened as he looked at her. "The castle senses your presence. It senses your power. You are not just any Omega. You are extraordinary. One day you will understand fully. For now, trust me." She swallowed, unsure what that meant, but a strange comfort settled in her chest. Even though the rival pack had tried to claim her, she had been rescued by someone far more than a king. Kale was a force of nature, terrifying and captivating. And somehow, she felt drawn to him in a way that went beyond words. As they walked through the massive gates, Selene noticed the castle's interior was as alive as its exterior. Shadows danced along the walls, shaped by flickering torches, yet some shadows seemed to move independently, curling and shifting as though they had a life of their own. The air smelled faintly of herbs, fire, and old magic, carrying a weight that made Selene's pulse quicken. "You must rest," Kale said, leading her to a room at the top of one of the highest towers. The bed was enormous, draped in silks, and the windows looked out over the forest. The moonlight spilled across the floor, silver and calm. Selene sank onto the bed, feeling both awe and exhaustion. "This place, it's like nothing I've ever seen," she whispered. Kale stood by the window, gazing out at the forest. "It has stood for centuries. It has seen wars, betrayals, and fates fulfilled. And now you are part of its story." Selene's fingers clenched the fabric of the bedspread. "But I didn't ask for this. My sisters, they betrayed me. How am I supposed to trust anyone?" Kale turned, his expression unreadable. For a moment his power seemed almost too vast to face. Yet when his gaze softened, Selene saw something else, something deeper, something that seemed meant only for her. "Trust is earned," he said simply, "not given, but you do not need to answer now. In time you will understand that some bonds are beyond choice. Some bonds are fate." Selene shivered. That word again. Fate. She could not explain why it sent warmth through her chest even as fear rippled along her spine. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden crash from below. The castle walls trembled lightly, dust falling from the stone. Selene's heart jumped. "Stay here," Kale commanded, and before she could protest, he was gone, a shadow melting into shadows. Selene's instincts screamed at her to follow, but she stayed put, her hands trembling. The castle hummed around her, low and powerful, and she felt something shift in the air, as though the walls themselves were alive, watching her. Down below, Kale confronted members of the rival pack who had dared to sneak near the castle. They had underestimated him. They had assumed the night would hide their approach, but Kale moved like a storm, fast, quiet, unstoppable. His presence alone seemed to warp the world around him. Shadows twisted around him like armor, and the air thickened with tension. Selene watched from above, heart racing. She felt pride, awe, and something more complicated, something she could not yet name. The Alpha King was terrifying, yes, but in a way that made her want to trust him completely, even if she barely knew him. The rival pack members fell back, realizing too late that they had challenged more than a king. Kale's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light as he whispered something under his breath, and the shadows around him tightened like coils, forcing the intruders to retreat. The forest beyond seemed to sigh in relief, and the castle settled back into quiet. When he returned, Kale's gaze met hers. "They will try again," he said, "but now you see why you must trust me. Your fate is more dangerous than you realize." Selene nodded, still trembling. I will try, but how do I know what to do? I am just me." Kale's expression softened further. "You are not just anything. You are extraordinary, Selene, and you will learn that in time." Over the next days, Selene began to adjust to life in the castle. Kale gave her lessons, not just about survival or combat, but about the history of the packs, the curses that had haunted them, and the bond that tied her to him. She learned that being fated to the Alpha King was not only an honor but a responsibility, one that carried great power and even greater danger. Yet for all the lessons, the tension between them simmered like a quiet flame. Every glance, every touch, every word carried weight. Selene wanted to reach for him, to trust him completely, but fear and betrayal still lingered in her heart. Kale, in turn, wrestled with his instincts. He wanted to claim her as his mate, to protect her with every fiber of his being, but he also respected her strength, her spirit, and the fragile trust she had not yet given him. One night, Selene wandered the castle corridors, unable to sleep. The castle was quiet, yet alive with whispers and flickers of magic. Shadows stretched across the walls, forming shapes that almost seemed like warnings. She paused outside a massive door she had never noticed before. Something drew her closer, an invisible thread that tugged at her very soul. When she opened the door, she found a room filled with ancient portraits. Kings, queens, and warriors of past centuries stared down at her with lifelike eyes. One portrait in particular drew her attention, a woman with dark hair, gray eyes like Kale's, and a calm, yet powerful expression. Selene's fingers brushed the frame, and a low hum filled the room. Her heart pounded as visions flashed before her eyes. Kale as a young alpha, battles waged, curses unleashed, and a shadow that threatened to consume him. She saw herself in these visions, standing by him, a partner, a mate, a force that could either save him or fail him. A whisper echoed through the room, soft but urgent. "The curse awakens. Only the bond of fate can endure it." Selene staggered back, breathless. She did not understand fully, but she felt the truth in it. Her connection to Kale was not just emotion, it was magic, destiny, and power intertwined. At that moment, Kale's voice called from the doorway. "Selene!" She turned, startled, and met his gaze. He stepped into the room, his presence commanding yet gentle. "I felt you here," he said. "This room, it knows you are meant for more than the ordinary. It is testing you as I warned. Do you understand?" Selene nodded, still trembling. I think so, but it's overwhelming." Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers lightly. "You are not alone, you never will be." In that moment, Selene felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. Despite the fear, the betrayal, the danger, she believed him. She believed that together they could face what was coming. But the night was not over. A sudden sound shattered the quiet, a howl from the forest, low and threatening. Selene's blood ran cold. Kale's eyes narrowed. "They are coming. The rival pack will not stop until they have claimed what they believe is theirs." Selene gripped his arm. What do we do?" Kale's jaw tightened. "We prepare. And you, Selene, you must learn to embrace what you are. Your power will be the key to survival." Her heart pounded as she looked into his eyes, gray and stormy, filled with command, warmth, and something more, a promise. For the first time since her betrayal, Selene felt a spark of hope. She was no longer alone. She was no longer powerless. And though danger loomed, though curses whispered from the shadows, she knew one thing. With Kale, she would face whatever came, and their bond, faded, undeniable, and ancient, would guide them through the darkness. Outside the castle, the forest stirred once more. Eyes glinted in the shadows, wolves growled low, and the rival pack prepared their next move. Selene's destiny had begun. And nothing, not betrayal, not fear, not curses, would turn her away from it. The dawn arrived with a pale, trembling light, casting silver across the castle's towering walls. Selene stood at the balcony, the chill air brushing her cheeks, and looked out over the forest that stretched endlessly beneath her. She had slept little, her mind restless with visions, whispers, and Kale's words echoing in her heart. The rival pack had not given up. Their presence in the forest was a shadow that could not be ignored. Kale appeared beside her silently, as he always did, like a shadow melting into the morning light. His gray eyes scanned the horizon, sharp, calculating, and unreadable. When they landed on Selene, a small warmth softened the edge of his stern expression. "They will strike again," he said quietly, almost to himself. "And when they do, you must be ready." Selene turned to him, her own chest tight with both fear and determination. "I will be. I have to be. But Kale, what if I fail?" Kale's gaze softened, and for a moment the weight of his title, the Alpha King, the immortal, the ruler, fell away, leaving only a man who wanted to protect what was his. "You will not fail," he said. "I will not let you." "We are tied, Selene. Fate does not make mistakes." Selene's heart trembled at the words. Fate. That word had haunted her since the forest. And yet with Kale it no longer felt like a burden. It felt alive, real, dangerous, yes, but beautiful. The first sign of trouble came as a low, rumbling growl from the forest. Kale's posture stiffened, and Selene felt the air around them shift. Shadows in the trees twisted unnaturally, coiling like serpents waiting to strike. "They are here," Kale whispered. "Now." Before Selene could react, the rival pack emerged from the tree line. Wolves and men moved together, silent, swift, and deadly. Selene's heart pounded. She had trained with Kale, learned some of the castle's secrets, and yet nothing had prepared her for this. Kale's hand found hers, steadying her as he murmured, "Trust me, we face them together." The ground seemed to respond to his presence. Shadows thickened around them, rising like walls, slowing the rival pack's advance. Wolves hissed, circling, uneasy at the unseen power protecting Selene. She felt it too, a hum beneath her skin, a warmth rising from deep within. Her pulse matched Kale's, as if their bond had begun to awaken something greater than themselves. The first wave of attackers reached the castle's edge. Kale moved with the grace of a predator, shadow merging with shadow, striking with precision. Selene instinctively followed, guided by his presence. She dodged, ducked, and pushed herself beyond fear, feeling a strange clarity in the chaos. Every glance at Kale, every step near him, brought a thrill that mixed with adrenaline. Then, one of the rival pack's warriors broke through the shadows, advancing toward Selene. Before she could react, Kale was there, a blur of motion pulling her behind him. His hand pressed over hers, and in that instant Selene felt a spark, sharp, warm, and unignorable. She gasped, realizing that her bond with him was no longer just words. It was power, instinct, and connection. After the fight, the forest fell silent. The rival pack had retreated, but the warning remained clear. They would return stronger, faster, more cunning. Kale turned to Selene, his expression unreadable. "You did well," he said softly. "More than you know, your instincts, your courage. It is unusual for someone so young." Selene's chest rose and fell rapidly. I only did what you did. I followed you." Kale's eyes softened, and for a moment he reached for her hand, not as a king, but as someone who needed her presence. "You are more than you realize, and more than I expected. Fate has not been kind, Selene, but it has made you strong. And that strength, it is ours now." The words sent a thrill through her heart. Strong, yes, but together, they were unstoppable. And yet, beneath the triumph, a shadow lingered. The vision she had seen in the ancient portrait haunted her. A curse loomed, a darkness that could consume Kale if their bond faltered, if their connection wavered. That night, Selene could not sleep. She wandered the castle halls, her footsteps echoing softly against the stone floors. The castle was alive with whispers, shifting shadows, and soft hums of power. She felt drawn once more to the portrait room, where the ancients seemed to watch, waiting, guiding, and warning. Kale found her there, standing before the same portrait, eyes wide with awe and fear. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked. Selene nodded. "The curse, I saw it again. It's waiting, and it's dangerous." Kale stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. "It is dangerous, but not insurmountable. We will face it together. You must believe that." Selene hesitated, her chest tight. "And if I fail?" Kale reached out, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Then I fail with you, but I do not believe you will. You are stronger than you think, Selene. And stronger than anyone could imagine, especially with me by your side." She shivered at the closeness of him, the intensity in his gaze, and the unspoken promise in his words. Something deep in her stirred, a longing, a trust, and a connection that made her feel both vulnerable and invincible. Days passed, each filled with lessons, training, and growing danger. Kale taught Selene to fight, to sense threats, and to trust her instincts. More importantly, he taught her to embrace her latent power. She felt it waking inside her, warm, pulsing, and alive. The castle seemed to recognize it, responding to her presence, bending light and shadow around her in subtle ways. Yet for all the lessons, the emotional tension between them deepened. Each glance carried weight. Each brush of the hand made her pulse quicken. Every word they spoke seemed to linger longer than it should, echoing in the hallways long after the conversation ended. One evening, while walking in the castle gardens, Selene and Kale found themselves alone. The moonlight shone on the fountains and flowers, silvering everything in a soft glow. "Kale," Selene began, her voice low, I feel something when I'm near you. "Something I can't explain." Kale's eyes softened and he stepped closer. "You do not need to explain, Selene. I feel it too. Our bond, it is awakening. Stronger than I expected, deeper than I have known in centuries." Selene's breath caught. "Centuries." He nodded, his gaze distant for a moment. "I have lived longer than most, carried the weight of kings, curses, and battles. And yet, in you, I feel a connection I never imagined possible. You awaken something in me, something I thought was lost forever." The words hung between them, fragile yet powerful. Selene's chest tightened, and she felt the pull of destiny more strongly than ever. Her heart wanted to reach for him, to trust him completely, but doubt and fear still lingered. She had been betrayed once. Could she trust so fully again? Before she could respond, a soft rumble came from the forest beyond the garden walls. The rival pack had returned. Kale's posture stiffened instantly, his expression hardening. "They are coming," he said, his voice low and steady. "And this time they will not retreat." Selene's heart raced, but she did not step back. Instead, she felt something awaken inside her, a courage, a strength, and a connection to Kale that made her feel as if she could face anything. Kale took her hand, and this time, the spark that passed between them was undeniable. Power surged along her skin, and shadows around them seemed to respond, curling protectively around their bodies. The castle itself seemed alive, sensing their bond, reinforcing their strength. The rival pack emerged, wolves growling, men armed and ready. But Kale and Selene moved as one, instincts intertwined, hearts beating in sync. Every step, every breath, every glance was perfectly aligned. The battle was not just of skill, but of bond, of destiny, of power awakened and shared. When the last of the rivals finally retreated, Selene's knees shook, but she stood tall, leaning slightly against Kale. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle, protective, yet charged with unspoken longing. "You did well," he said softly. "Not just today, but every day since you came here. You are ready in ways even I did not anticipate." Selene felt warmth flood her chest. For the first time, she did not feel like a victim. She was no longer the girl her sisters had betrayed. She was Selene, the fated mate of the Alpha King, a force in her own right, and a power that could stand beside Kale against any darkness. And yet the whispers of the portrait room haunted her still. The curse awaited. The true trial was not over. She could feel it, simmering in the shadows, a darkness that would test their bond, their hearts, and their fate. Kale looked at her then, his expression both stern and tender. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. Fate has chosen us, and I will not fail you." Selene's chest tightened. She nodded, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. Together they were more than king and mate. They were partners, warriors, and forces of destiny intertwined. And beyond the castle walls, the rival pack stirred again. Their return was inevitable, their threat unyielding. The trials of fate were only beginning. The castle stood under a sky streaked with crimson as the sun set, painting the towers in blood and gold. The forest below stirred with a restless energy, signaling that the rival pack had returned, stronger and more determined than ever. Selene stood at the highest tower, her hair whipping around her face in the wind. Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. She was no longer the frightened girl betrayed by her sisters. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more certain of her destiny. Kale emerged silently from the shadows behind her as he always did. His gray eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and commanding, yet when they landed on her, there was a softness, a warmth, and a depth that few ever saw. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low but unwavering. Selene nodded, her fingers brushing against his. "I am. Whatever comes, we face it together." Kale's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, a rare glimpse of the man behind the Alpha King. "Good. Then let us end this." Below them, the forest trembled as the rival pack advanced. Wolves ran at their side, and men moved with deadly precision. But the castle itself seemed alive, its ancient stones humming with power, reacting to Kale's presence and Selene's emerging strength. Selene felt the energy thrumming beneath her skin, the power she had awakened through her bond with Kale. It was warm, pulsing, alive. She could feel the castle responding, shadows twisting protectively around her, light bending to her presence. She was not just a passenger in this battle. She was part of the force that would decide the outcome. Kale took her hand firmly, and together they stepped onto the balcony, overlooking the approaching threat. "We must move," he said. "Our strength lies in our bond, not just our power. Stay close to me and trust yourself." Selene drew in a deep breath. She had trained, she had learned, she had grown, and most importantly, she had trusted herself and Kale. "I will," she said, her voice steady. The rival pack reached the castle gates, their growls and shouts echoing through the trees. Kale moved first, a blur of shadow and strength, his presence warping the air around him. Selene followed, instinct guiding her movements, her own power radiating outward in waves that made the attackers hesitate. The first wave fell quickly, surprised by the unity and force of Kale and Selene. Yet the true danger lay beyond. The leaders of the rival pack, cunning and ruthless, had saved themselves for a final strike. They emerged from the shadows, their eyes blazing with hunger for power and revenge. Selene's pulse quickened, but she did not falter. She felt Kale's hand on hers, their fingers intertwined, and a spark of energy surged between them. Shadows twisted around them, rising like shields, while the castle hummed with protective magic. The leaders of the rival pack lunged forward, but Selene and Kale moved as one. Every strike, every step, every breath was synchronized. Their bond, awakened and strengthened through trials, had become a force that even the rival pack could not counter. In the midst of battle, Selene realized something remarkable. Her latent power was not just defensive, it could heal, protect, and even strengthen Kale. With a touch, she could amplify his strength, shield him from harm, and guide their movements with unspoken communication. Kale noticed immediately. His gray eyes softened as he glanced at her mid-battle. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly, a rare smile breaking through the intensity. "Stronger than I ever imagined." Selene felt a warmth in her chest. "We are stronger together," she replied, almost instinctively. The rival pack's leaders tried one final assault, moving in perfect coordination. But the castle itself seemed to respond to Selene's awakening power. The runes along the walls glowed faintly, light twisting to protect the defenders. Shadows coiled around the attackers, slowing them, separating them, leaving them vulnerable. Kale moved with unmatched precision, every strike decisive, every motion powerful. Selene followed, her instincts sharp, her power flowing freely. Together they were unstoppable, a force of fate, a bond that no one could break. At last, the rival pack faltered, their resolve crumbling in the face of the unity and strength of Kale and Selene. Wolves howled, retreating back into the forest, and the men fled, realizing that the castle was not just a home. It was a sentinel of ancient power, and the Alpha King and his fated mate were its heart. The forest settled, silence returning with the weight of victory. Selene stood breathless, her hands still in Kale's. He looked at her with pride and something deeper, something that made her heart ache with longing and relief. "You did it," he said softly. "You stood strong. You saved us." Selene shook her head, a small smile breaking through her exhaustion. "No, we did it together." Kale's gaze softened further, and for the first time he allowed himself to show vulnerability. "I was lonely before you, Selene. Centuries of waiting, centuries of loss. But now I am no longer alone, and I never will be again." Selene felt tears prick at her eyes. All the fear, the betrayal, the darkness, they had led her here to this moment, to this man, to this bond. She stepped closer, her forehead brushing his. "I am not afraid anymore," she whispered. "Not with you." Kale's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing gently over her skin. "Nor should you be. We are stronger than any curse, any enemy, any shadow. Together we can face anything." The castle hummed around them, shadows retreating, light spreading across the stones. Selene could feel the curse that had haunted Kale for centuries beginning to loosen, weakened by the strength of their bond. The air itself seemed to sigh with relief, as if acknowledging that fate had been fulfilled. Selene turned toward the horizon, where the forest stretched endlessly, alive with both mystery and danger. She knew their trials were not completely over. The world was vast and enemies would come again, but the fear that had once dominated her heart was gone, replaced by something stronger: love, trust, and a bond that was older than time itself. Kale followed her gaze, his hand still holding hers. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Fate does not end, but now we face it as one, and together nothing can break us." Selene felt a shiver of anticipation, excitement, and certainty. She had been betrayed, sold, and tested, yet she had found her strength, her purpose, and her mate. The darkness that had once threatened to consume her now seemed distant, powerless before the light of their union. As night fell, the castle glowed softly, the runes along the walls shimmering with ancient magic. Selene and Kale stood together, hands intertwined, shadows twisting gently around them as guardians. Their bond, unbreakable and fated, radiated outward, a force that would protect the castle, the kingdom, and the world beyond. Selene smiled, her heart full. "I am ready," she said, "for whatever comes next." Kale pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "And I am ready," he whispered, "for everything as long as we face it together." The wind whispered through the towers, carrying with it the voices of the past, the power of the present, and the promise of the future. The curse that had once threatened Kale's heart had been weakened, their bond transforming it into strength rather than fear. Shadows no longer held menace. They moved in harmony with them, protective and alive. Selene looked up at Kale, her gray eyes meeting his stormy ones. "We are unstoppable," she said softly. Kale's lips curved in a smile rare and genuine. "Yes, Selene, unstoppable, and the world will know it soon enough." The castle, the forest, the kingdom, all seemed to settle, acknowledging the union of fated hearts. For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King and his mate stood not just victorious, but whole, their bond a force that could endure any trial. And yet, in the distance beyond the forest, shadows stirred. Fate was never finished. But for now, Selene and Kale stood together, unbroken, ready to face all that destiny would bring. Together, they were not just king and mate. They were a force of legend, a bond of fate, and a promise of power, love, and hope that would echo through generations. The night sky sparkled with stars, the moon casting a silver glow on the castle towers. Selene leaned against Kale, feeling the steady beat of his heart, a rhythm that matched her own. For the first time in her life, she felt at peace. And though the world waited, watching and whispering of trials yet to come, she knew one truth that would endure forever. Their bond was eternal. Their love was unstoppable. Their fate was theirs, and theirs alone.